We had one other quick media story we wanted to sneak in here, even though it's already a long show and I still have monologue to do. But obviously, Donald Trump went on with Joe Rogan. Rogan, in that interview we showed you, Trump brought up Kamala, and Rogan kind of defended her and was like, no, I still want to have a conversation with her. Like, I'm still hoping that may happen. He tweeted this out as an update. He says, for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. They offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have had to travel to her. They only wanted to do an hour. I strongly feel the best way to do it is in the studio in Austin. My sincere wish is to just have a nice conversation, get to know her as a human being. I really hope we can make it happen. What's your reaction, Saagar?
Well, twofold. I get him wanting to do it in the studio in Austin, but with this close to the election, it may not be possible, and it would be worth, in my opinion, compromising a little bit on that. In terms of time, Trump went for 3 hours. I think that's great if Harris could do it, but you know, he did have Bernie Sanders on. I looked, what wasn't it? Wasn't it only an hour? So there is precedent for only an hour.
A shorter political interview.
I mean, it does show a sign of weakness if they only want to do an hour. I think they should just do the 3 and just eat it. I mean, I looked at her schedule. She's got 5 interviews today, right? So it's probably worth, you know, I would say that this one interview is worth 3 whatever local television news hits. They're obviously nervous. They want to cover their bases. That said, Joe, in his after action report on a Fight Companion, was asked about Kamala, and he was like, if they want preconditions and they don't want to bring up policy, that's fine. I'm interested in talking to her as a human being. Now, I think it's worth meditating on this, and maybe you tell me. I was talking with one of my friends. I'm actually not interested in politicians as a human being. I have read, I'm serious. Let me lay out my case.
I kind of agree.
All right, so my political heroes were terrible people, absolutely awful. LBJ, who I believe is the single most effective politician of all time, rampantly cheated on his wife, was a virulent personal racist, often denigrated his female staff to the point of tears, took a shit and forced his aides to transcribe his notes. That's a bad person. John F. Kennedy, I mean, go read about a 19-year-old girl who was a White House intern and what she alleges happened with him. And that's one girl out of probably hundreds. FDR humiliated Eleanor Roosevelt by sleeping with his secretary, refusing to fire her, and he died with her, not with his own wife. Didn't care. I mean, I could go on forever. Teddy Roosevelt, he loses his wife and his mom on the same day that his child is born, takes his daughter, parks it with his sister, and says, hey, good luck. I'm going to South Dakota for 3 years. A lot of these people, they're not good people. Now, I don't really care about that on one level because they did a lot of good for the country. So how does it affect my life? How does it affect the trajectory of the country? Does it matter if LBJ was a frequent N-word user, if he passed the Civil Rights Act? If you're a black person, I would leave that up to you. And that's kind of my point, is like, I don't think that the psychology of what it takes to be president or to even get to the level of Kamala or Trump produces quote unquote good people. I also don't care about that. So that's where there's a little bit of a flaw in terms of like, I want to see who they are as people. I'm like, I'm not all that interested in who you are as people. As a voter or as a citizen, I want to know what you're going to do for me. And maybe that's a very cynical, people often say Indian immigrant way of looking at it. But I mean, I've just read too much. I mean, for example, Barack Obama, if you read Michelle Obama's memoirs and his, he openly admits that Michelle never wanted him to run for Congress, for Senate specifically. He filed without really telling her. She is furious to the point of thinking about divorcing him, miserable for 8 years in the White House. I mean, I'm gonna ask you, I can't imagine treating my wife that way, ever. If she told me I don't want to do this, it's over. It doesn't matter. Imagine yourself in a marriage as a family unit, treating your spouse that way with your own ambition. I mean, I think that's sick and honestly gross, but that's kind of what it takes to suffer through all of this. So that's just a long way of saying, like, I don't care who these people are.
Yeah, I mean,
just who they are as people. The more I know, the worse it gets.
I guess I'll take a moderate path on this. Because, like, you know, with Kamala in particular, there's this really very open, continued open question of, like, what makes you, because it translates into, I don't think the personal and the public are totally separate, because it translates into, is there something core here that you're going to fight for? You know, and so that's why I think there is something to be learned, something to be gained. With regard to specifically, at this point, I don't even think that there's much benefit for Kamala Harris to go on Rogan's pod. Like at
Really?
this late, at this late in the game, his audience is overwhelmingly pro-Trump.
The clips could be big.
They are but they're happy with the meta narrative that's in place right now, which is like Trump had his like carnival of racists at Madison Square Garden, and you know that's kind of they're happy to close on that note. It would be too close to Election Day if there was some screw up from her, which we should all be very like that's very possible, you know, that she would have a moment that was really bad for her. So they would be too close to Election Day to clean that up. It would shift the narrative into, you know, potentially more fraught or risky territory. And so if she had done it earlier on, I think it could have made some sense. But as I said to you previously when we were talking about the Rogan Trump interview, like she already did her go in the lion's den thing with Brett Baier. She already proved some level of like, I can go into a space that's somewhat hostile and I can hold my own. So I'm just not sure how much there is to be gained from an appearance, and it does have significant risk at this point. So I understand why they're kind of like, maybe this isn't worth making it happen.
I think, here's why I think it's worth it. Why not? It would be a challenge coming in after Trump. It would be a position of strength. It would also, I mean, especially if Joe literally said, if they don't want to talk about policy, then that's fine. I mean, she
Although
allegedly—
to be honest with you, she does the worst when she gets asked, like, you know, personal, like,
disagree.
what's your biggest mistake? Like questions like that is where she actually
I would want to talk about
I think
policy.
she'd be better off if she's like, I only want to talk about policy.
Look, they claim a lot of stuff. They claim she's into Formula One. I'm like, okay, you know, I'll hear you out. You know, they claim. I was listening to her with Shannon Sharp. She seems like a diet. You know, she seems like well acquainted with food and diet. Right? She said she eats a
loves to cook.
Omelet. Likes to cook every morning. She says that she works out. Rogan is a workout freak and he knows a lot about foods. I'd be curious to hear about the morning routine. I can see why some normal people and all that would be into that. But I guess my general heuristic is these people, you have to understand what the psychology it is to spend your life on the road, to sleep in different hotel rooms, to literally have the idolatry and the ego to think that you can have the supreme power of mankind in your hands and to give up everything else in your life to get to that position. I don't think people quite understand it. And we're not talking about just 4 years. It takes a Kamala Harris, how old is she, 60, right? She's been a professional politician for 35 years. That means you don't have a personal life. Every single thing that you do is literally revolves around getting to this position, about getting up the next rung. I mean, even with Trump, it's like, you know, even whether he's Mar-a-Lago, he's working, right? When you're having dinner, you're always having dinner with people who are in the business. You need to be born for this. And like, it takes a type of personality which most people would not actually like, you know, in terms of relatability. Like with George W. Bush, like the whole, like, I want to have a beer with him. I'm like, well, how did that work out? Yeah, it doesn't work out well.
It makes me think of Bernie Sanders and his absolute aversion to talking about
I remember
himself.
This. Yeah, that's right.
You know, I mean, famously with the New York Times editorial board, he's like, you know,
yeah, he's
I'm
like,
not going to call you on your birthday,
yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
And his aides always wanted, his campaign always wanted to talk about his biography.
Right, and he's like, no,
right? And who he is and his background, like these, you know, his Jewish upbringing and hard scrap working class, all this stuff. And he's just like, no, I want to talk about policy. I want to talk about millionaires and billionaires and what we're going to do and Medicare for all. And you are not going to get me off of that. So respect.
I mean, that is
obviously, though, he's not in the White House, so there you go.
I would like it to work that way. Yeah, but people delude themselves. You know, the Obamas literally had a love movie made about him. That doesn't sound like a love story to me, what I just laid out. You know, the Clinton, I mean, that's a whole other level in terms of the Clintons. I mean, okay, so Jimmy Carter, probably our nicest president, right? If you read his memoir, I'm sorry I'm going off on this, but this is something I think about a lot. If you read Jimmy Carter's memoir, he decides to quit his naval career. He's living in Hawaii with his wife. His wife loves Hawaii. She hates Plains, Georgia. His dad dies, and he has an opportunity to go and take over his dad's job. You know what he does? He resigns from the Navy, and he tells her, hey, Rosalind, we're moving back to Plains. She's humiliated. She's weeping, and he's like, that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, didn't she, like, not talk to him for months or something?
Years. Yeah. That's who these people are. They're narcissists. They're crazy. Can you imagine acting like that in a marriage? But that's who they are.
I feel like that's also just a different time, too, though.
Well,
like,
that's what he claims.
Excuse, but I do think there is some of that of, like, you know, the man is the provider. Like, we do, I'm the captain of the ship.
Right.
We do what I say we're going to do. And
so it was 1955. You think that all husbands were acting like that in 1955?
I don't freaking know.
Think so.
Seems like
yeah. Anyway, hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.